morning, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join us for our ISO 50001 Energy Management System webinar. We'll have a lot to cover today, so I want to get going as quickly as possible. We're going to have a lot to cover in a short time. So if you have questions, please hold your questions till the end, and we'll address all of them at that time. So my name is Scott Jones. I am the EHS Program Manager here at Perry Johnson Registrars. I manage our environmental, health and safety, energy programs, including ISO 14001, OSAS 18001, along with a couple of the recycling standards such as R2, which is your e-waste recycling standard, along with e-stewards and RIOS. So today we're going to focus on what some of the benefits and the purpose of 50001 truly is, how to get certified to it, and then we'll follow up with some key resources that will help you not only implement ISO 50001, but help you get certified to it as well. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with ISO 50001, ISO 50001 is the cornerstone for improving energy performance. It's all about improving your energy consumption, your energy use, and your energy efficiency through energy performance. So ISO 50001 was established in June 15th of 2011. It's an ISO standard, so similar to your 14001 standard, follows the same principles, the PDCA model for continual improvement, which we'll get into here in a little bit. Now, just to make sure, I want to make sure everybody can hear me. We were having some audio issues previously. So if you're having a difficult time hearing me, please type a question in and let me know. We'll do our best to resolve it, but and I'm hoping we should be good at this point. So one of the key questions that we often have is, why would a company want to consider ISO 50001 if they already have an ISO 14001, which is your environmental management system, already in place? So ISO 50001 is really designed to complement 14001. Oftentimes with 14001, the energy component is overlooked, and it's not really, they may touch on certain components of it, maybe improving the lighting in a facility to help reduce energy consumption, help save some money, but they really don't get into the core requirements and the core elements of energy management for a facility. So obviously 50001 was designed specifically for energy management, identifying your significant energy uses, kind of determining what some opportunities for improvement are, how to improve those. So it forces companies to establish baselines and identify areas for significant improvement in energy performance. Really, it gives you an overall in-depth look at where your energy management is, where most of your energy resources are being spent. And then lastly, it encourages companies to look into renewable energy sources. So again, the purpose of ISO 50001, it provides organizations with an internationally recognized framework for implementing an energy management system. It doesn't tell you how to improve your energy management. It doesn't give you specific requirements that you need to, reduce your energy consumption by so much. It just sets a framework. It gives you the ability to make this system work with your facility. Because every facility is different. Every facility has different equipment, components. All this does is give you the framework to establish a better energy management program. So the standard addresses the following: energy use and consumption, measurement, documentation, and reporting of energy use and consumption, design and procurement practices for energy using equipment, systems, and processes, and then all variables affecting energy performance that can be monitored and influenced by the organization. Now, the variables is a key element to the 50001. When you're looking at your energy sources, you're determining your baseline, you need to consider all the variables that affect those, especially when it comes to weather. If you're in a region that has extreme weather conditions and extreme seasons, you want to make sure that you're taking into account the variables for all those different seasons. You can't set a baseline based on the summer months alone. You have to take into account at least an entire year to get a full idea of what the different variables are, how those affect the different seasons, how that affects your energy consumption and your energy use, to truly be able to identify opportunities for improvement. So ISO 50001 intends to help organizations better manage their existing significant energy uses, promote energy management best practices, evaluate and prioritize the implementation of new energy efficient technologies, or OFIs, and integrate an ENMS with other management systems. So again, ISO 50001 follows the same basic requirements as your environmental or health and safety management system. So really, to implement an ISO 50001 system, if you already have 14001 or 18001 in place, it's really not going to require that much more work or that much more effort. Majority of the documentations that you have for your EMS or your OHS system are already going to be there. So this standard really allows you to dive into what the true energy issues are at your facility without having to worry about a lot of the other management system requirements, because those are already addressed through your environmental and health and safety standards. So some of the benefits for ISO 50001 include the realization of energy cost savings. Obviously, for any facility, this is one of the key drivers to establishing an ISO 50001 system. Yes, of course, there's costs associated with the certification process, but establishing that system and truly understanding where your money's going and what equipment, what processes are really consuming the most amount of energy is beyond invaluable to a facility to understand how to improve those processes, how to save money, reduce your energy consumption, increase your energy efficiency, and then increase your overall energy performance. On top of that, you can reduce your environmental impact, which is obviously a great PR driver for showing that you're being green, you're taking the initiative to do the responsible thing. And then lastly, helps to achieve energy compliance, especially in other countries where there's more compliance and regulations around energy consumption, energy use. This helps you maintain those and be in compliance with those legal requirements. And worldwide credibility to energy consciousness and able to be used by small to large organizations across diverse commercial, industrial, and public sectors. So one of the nice things about ISO 50001 is that any company of any size in any industry can implement this system. You do not necessarily have to have ISO 50001 be implemented in your entire facility. You can choose a specific process that you want to be certified to ISO 50001 if you really wanted to, or you could even go down to a specific equipment. But obviously that's going to be indicated on your certificate as to what's truly certified. And then lastly, improves the ability to set baselines, measure, monitor, and report on energy performance. So one key difference as far as the ISO standards go, for ISO 50001, there's a requirement that you have to continually improve your energy performance. So where most ISO standards, you have to show continual improvement of your management system, for 50001, not only do you have to show continual improvement of the energy management system, but you have to show continual improvement of your energy performance. Now that's not to say that you might set objectives and targets to achieve a certain energy performance that may not come out the exact way that you planned. That doesn't mean you're going to lose your certification. That just means you need to identify what the problem areas were, why didn't you achieve it, and what do you need to do to make sure that you achieve that in the future. Or maybe the goal was just unrealistic, or you had certain variables that came up that you weren't expecting. So why didn't you achieve that? What do you need to do to improve that, to achieve that energy performance? But over, let's say, a 3-year cycle, you need to show that that energy performance has been improved upon. So along with the other ISO standards, energy management follows the PDCA model for continual improvement. That's the plan, do, check, act model for continual improvement. So that planning portion involves your energy policy, setting your objectives and targets, determining your scope and boundaries, establishing your documents, your procedures, conducting your energy review. So all that goes into that planning process. Once your system has been established and you're ready to implement it, then you can put that into the do portion, which is the implementation and operation. After it's been running for a little bit, you can start checking your system. You can do monthly checks, you can do quarterly checks, annual checks, to see how effective that management system is working. So that checking portion is part of that monitoring and measuring, your internal audits, your corrective action process, your compliance reviews, making sure that objectives and targets are being met. So once you've done that checking portion, you're going to take the outputs of that, both the good and the bad, and see where your system's at. Where can you improve your system? What areas have you been deficient in? Those outputs that you've identified, you're going to determine how you will improve your system. That will go into the ACT portion. That's generally your management review. But it doesn't have to only be your management review. But during that management review, you're going to look at those outputs and then figure out what needs to be improved upon. Do objectives and targets need to be revised, or new objectives and targets need to be set? That's then going to go back into that planning process. You're going to reestablish and revise certain procedures and requirements. And again, that's just a constant cycle that will eventually go back into the do portion, the check portion, and back into the act. So the first portion of the standards is the plan. Again, determine that scope and boundaries, which we'll get into momentarily, but it's up to the organization to determine what that scope and boundaries will be for their facility. Do an energy review and establish a baseline for your energy consumption. Set your objectives and targets. Develop your action plans based on those objectives and targets. And then define your energy performance indicators. So the energy performance indicators is how you're going to measure your improvement. So the scope and boundaries, the scope is the extent of activities, facilities, and decisions that the organization addresses through an ENMS, which is your energy management system, which can include several boundaries. So the boundaries are your physical or site limits and or organizational limits as defined by the organization. So it could be a process, a group of processes. It could be one building out of several buildings on a piece of property. It could be several facilities located throughout the country or throughout the world. So you can, with the ISO 50001, you're allowed to have multiple sites or a multi-site certification. So the one thing with boundaries and with your scope, though, you need to be able to measure the flow of whatever utility or whatever the energy that's being used. You need to be able to isolate that for the boundaries that you're using. So if you're going to have, let's say you have 3 buildings on a piece of property, and you only want one of those buildings to be part of your certification, you're going to need a flow meter specifically for that one building, so you know exactly how much energy that building is consuming. If you have one flow meter measuring for all 3 buildings, that's not going to give you an accurate reading for that one building, for your boundary. So you need to make sure that that boundary is able to be monitored and measured independently. So the energy review is probably the most crucial and critical part of the ISO 50001 standard. So the energy review includes current energy sources. You want to determine what the past and present energy use and consumptions are and what you estimate for the future. From your energy sources, identify which ones are your significant energy uses. And then identify and prioritize opportunities for improving energy performance. If you've identified, let's say, 3 different significant energy uses, focus initially on those 3 areas and come up with several opportunities for improvement for each of those areas. And then from those 3 or however many opportunities you identify for those areas, determine which ones you want to start with, which ones are going to give you the most benefit in potentially the quickest payback for implementing energy improvement. So when prioritizing improvement opportunities, you want to consider cost involved versus payback, some of the risk factors, and then also determine your significant energy uses. For your improvement opportunities that you identify, once you've identified what those opportunities are, you want to set objectives and targets that you want to reach to obtain whatever improvement opportunity you're trying to achieve. So your objectives and targets need to be specific. Your objective may be an overall goal that you want to achieve. You want to improve a reduction of your electricity consumption. Your target is going to be that specific. How much do you want to reduce it by? Do you want to reduce it for a specific area, for a specific process? Make sure when you're identifying that target, you're establishing a baseline to compare that to. So for 2015, we want to reduce electricity consumption by 10%. So what was that baseline in 2014? Because you need to have that baseline established to know what that 10% is going to achieve. Once those objectives and targets have been established, now it's time to develop your action plans. Your action plan are going to include responsibilities, action items that need to be done to make sure that you can achieve that objective and target. Define your energy performance indicators. Again, these are your measurable, how are you going to achieve that energy performance? You know, what specific criteria are you going to monitor and measure that by? And then establish energy baselines. Basis for comparison of energy performance is your starting point. The initial baseline should be developed from the energy review. So during the energy review, you're going to be looking at your past and your present energy consumption. So you should already have an idea of where you were at previously. That's what determined what opportunities for improvement you're going to go with. So here's some examples of an energy performance, or OFIs. You have the facility, you have the yearly energy cost. Here are some of the recommendation or opportunities for improvement that you're considering. You have the cost to implement them, your annual savings, and then your payback period. So something as simple as this can give you an idea of how to prioritize your opportunities for improvement. So your ENPIs are quantitative value or measure of energy performance. It helps turn energy data into useful information for top management and can be expressed as a simple metric, ratio, or more complex model. So for example, BTU per widget, BTU per pound of paint. So this gives you specifics to measure your objectives and targets. So here we have the energy objectives and targets. Again, the objective is kind of your overall goal that you're trying to achieve, where your energy target is the detailed and quantifiable energy performance requirement related to the energy objective. So your objectives and targets can apply to an entire organization, to multiple buildings or facilities, or to specific processes within a building. So here are some examples for objectives versus targets. So an objective, reduce energy use. It's very generic. It's very much a larger, more generic idea of what you want to achieve, where your target goes into specifics. Reduce electricity use by 5%. Reduce natural gas use by 15%. So you want to identify the time frame that you want to complete that by. So this says in 1999. You also want to make sure that you're identifying what you're comparing that to. Are you comparing that to 1998? Are you comparing that to an average over the past few years? if for some reason 1998 wasn't really representative of your typical electricity use, you might want to go with a previous year, 1997 or 96, that's more representative of what 1999 will be. And it could be based on production. If 1998 showed lower production, most likely you're going to have less processes, less shifts, less employees, less energy use. So you want to make sure that the baseline that you've established is representative of the current year. So your action plans are developed to help you achieve those objectives and targets and need to include the designation of responsibility, the means and timeframes by which individual targets are to be achieved, a statement of the method by which an improvement in energy performance shall be verified, and a statement of method of verifying results. So once you've implemented your action plans, you want to make sure that you're evaluating the effectiveness of those action plans in achieving those objectives and targets. So all that was part of the planning process. You're establishing your management system. Determining the key behind this is identifying your opportunities for improvement, setting your objectives and targets, and establishing your action plans. Those are the core critical components of this management system. So once those are established, put that into the do process. So implement your action plans and your other outputs from the planning process. So part of the do portion includes the competency, the training and awareness of your employees. Communication, how are you going to communicate your objectives and targets to ensure that the employees are aware of them, both internally and then external personnel as well. Basically anybody who has the potential to affect your objectives and targets. Documentation, documenting the scope and boundaries, your energy policy, energy objectives, targets, and action plans. So these are all specifics that need to be documented. There's obviously more requirements for documentation, but these are the core documents of the standard. And then again, after you've implemented for a while, you're going to start checking that management system, see how effective it is. So you're going to monitor your processes and measure your energy usage, check your results against the targets and objectives you set, report and communicate the results, particularly with key decision makers. So it's great to check the system to make sure it's working properly or identify areas for improvement, but the key is what are you going to do with those outputs? How are you going to ensure that those outputs are directed to the right people so the proper improvements can be made? So the management review, which really is the act portion, you don't have to have, a lot of people think of management review as you have one annual meeting. It doesn't have to be one annual meeting. It can be monthly meetings, quarterly meetings, semi-annual meetings, however your management system is set up. But those outputs from the checking need to go into that to determine how you're going to improve your system. So you want to consider the outputs, both the strengths and the weaknesses of the check portion, to determine what improvements can be made to the management system. From those outputs, it'll help you establish new objectives and targets and action plans, or address issues which prevented existing objectives and targets to be achieved. Again, it's not the end of the world if those existing objectives and targets were not achieved, but the key is to understand why they weren't, how are you going to resolve that, and generally that's going to go into your corrective action process to understand the root cause of why it occurred and how are you going to fix it. So the key term or definition behind the energy management system is your energy performance, which is measurable results related to energy efficiency, energy use, and energy consumption. So your ENPIs are used to determine changes in your energy performance. So again, examples of BTU per widget or BTU per pound of paint. So energy performance is basically the driving factor for your energy management system. So energy performance, as it relates to your energy efficiency, it's the relationship between an output of performance, service, goods, or energy, and an input of energy. So examples would be equipment efficiency, process efficiency, conversion efficiency. Are you using older equipment that has a lower efficiency? A lot of the equipment nowadays is energy saving, higher efficiency equipment. Can you look at implementing a new piece of equipment that will improve your energy efficiency? Related to energy use, it's the manner or kind of application of energy. For example, lighting, heating, cooling. So examples could include incandescent versus fluorescent light bulbs, blowers versus compressed air, electric versus gas heating. So changing the type of the equipment that you're using to a more energy efficient type of equipment that uses less energy. And then lastly, related to energy consumption, or the amount of energy applied. So for examples of this, 500 gallons of oil consumption, 15,000 kilowatt hours of electricity consumption, 750 MBTUs of natural gas consumption. So this is strictly focused on how much energy are you consuming, and are there ways to reduce the amount of energy consumption. So all three of those components go into your energy performance and help you improve the energy performance of your management system. So again, benefits of certification: reduce energy costs, improve corporate image among regulators, customers, and the public, proof of social responsibility, and improve employee morale. The more the employees feel like they're involved in helping improve, your energy management, the better the morale is going to be. So that's really kind of the core requirements and really what the energy management standard is all about. So if you look at the ISO 50001 standard, compare that to the ISO 14001 standard, you're going to see that the requirements are very much in line from clause to clause with the standards, with pretty much all the ISO standards. You have your objectives and targets, you have your policy, you have your requirements for legal requirements, your operational controls, and going into the checking with your corrective actions, your compliance reviews, and then following up with your management reviews. So if you already have a 14001 or an 18001 system in place, it's the requirements to implement 50001 are pretty minimal. And if you're starting from scratch, obviously you're going to have more requirements if you don't have one of those standards in place. But overall, the amount of money that we've seen and the industry has seen by implementing an ISO 50001 system far outweighs any certification costs associated with it. So the certification process to become certified to ISO 50001 or 14001 or 18001 are all the same. You have your initial audit, which consists of two stages. You have your stage 1 audit, which is really an on-site document review of your documentation, your procedures related to your energy management system. The whole purpose and intent of the stage 1 is to ensure that you're ready to proceed to the stage 2. So stage 1, you're looking at your documents, procedures, more that planning process of the PDCA model. Stage 2, you're looking at the implementation of that, the checking of that, and then the acting of that. So the stage 2 is generally scheduled 30 to 45 days after the stage 1 audit. Any nonconformances or concerns identified at stage 1, we want to make sure that you have time to address those prior to the stage 2. Because if they're not addressed prior to the stage 2, it'll most likely lead to nonconformances at the stage 2, which will delay your certification. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with nonconformances and what those look like and what they truly are, it's basically a breakdown or a non-fulfillment of a requirement of the management system, whether of the standard or your organization's specific requirements. So those are generally classified under two categories: minor nonconformances and major nonconformances. A minor nonconformance is a simple breakdown, a one-time issue where a requirement was not fulfilled. Your major nonconformance is more of an overall larger breakdown of the management system. An entire clause may be missing. You'll see you don't have a corrective action process in place, or you haven't done an internal audit or conducted a management review. Those are major breakdowns of the system and will result in major nonconformances. So with any nonconformance, you need to develop a corrective action plan to address those nonconformances. Now, this is one of the probably more difficult requirements or components for us as a certification body to manage and close out after an audit. So the less findings you have, the quicker you'll be certified. And I say it's one of the more difficult ones for us. A lot of companies and a lot of people have a difficult time understanding what truly constitutes an adequate corrective action. The corrective action has three components. It has your correction, your root cause, and your corrective action. Your correction is your immediate containment. What did you do immediately to fix that issue? Where your root cause is, why did that nonconformance occur? And then finally, your corrective action. Your corrective action needs to address that root cause and ensure that that nonconformance does not recur. So for minor nonconformances, all you need is the corrective action to close that out. And then we'll follow up at the next audit to ensure that it was in fact effectively closed out in practice. The major nonconformance requires objective evidence of what you implemented to close out in addition to that corrective action. So prior to issuing of certificates, those two need to be closed out before we can issue that certificate. So the stage 2 is always on site. We go on site. We're conducting a lot of interviews, observations, and it's really just a sampling of your management system to ensure that it's running effectively. So once any issues or all issues have been closed out from the stage 2 audit, we can issue your certification. And then following that initial registration audit or certification audit, annually, or if you choose to, you could do semi-annually, you'll have surveillance audits. Now these are partial system audits. We're looking at areas of previous concern or key areas of the management system. For example, your improvement of energy performance. We're going to looking at your objectives and targets every time because that's a core requirement of the energy management system. And then every 3 years you'll have your recertification audit, which is a full system audit to make sure that your entire management system is running effectively. Now after that recertification audit, we'll reissue a new certificate for an additional 3 years. And we'll continue the surveillance audit. So it's a constant cycle of you have your initial audit, generally 2 surveillance audits, and then a recertification audit, and that cycle repeats. So PGR is seeking an ISO 50001 program launch candidate. So what this means is for us to be fully accredited to offer ISO 50001 certification audits, we first need to have basically a witness audit with our accreditation body. So for a company who's interested in this, we're offering significant discounts for the certification audit and travel expenses as well. So basically we're offering a 50% discount on all travel costs and certification costs to get somebody on board to complete this audit with us. So we're also interested in working with consultants and potential auditors to audit to the standard, and as well as potentially other environmental and health and safety standards. So if you're interested, please contact myself, Scott Jones. I'll have my contact information up here at the end of the presentation. So here's some useful and helpful resources if you're interested in just learning more about the standard or looking into implementing an ISO 50001 standard. So the first one is it's a government website, but it has some useful information on what the standard's all about, the development of the standard. But the next one, the saveenergynow.org, is really probably the most helpful for implementing the standard. It provides step-by-step guidance basically for each provision of the standard on what's really required, what steps need to be taken to implement it, and it even provides you templates to help you implement it. Now this is all free of charge. This is also I believe, a government website that is aimed at promoting ISO 50001 to help companies reduce their energy consumption and improve their energy performance. And then you have your ISO.org website, which really is where you can purchase the standard and learn a little bit more about the specifics of the standard. And then there's EnergyStar.gov, which provides guidelines for energy management as well. But there's numerous websites out there you can go to and learn more information about the standard. And but if you want more information about the certification process and the steps that you need, you can contact Perry Johnson. I'll be happy to help you in any way that I can. So I'm going to leave it at that for now. I'm going to open up to questions. I know I kind of went through it pretty quickly, but I want to make sure that if anybody has any questions that we can address those and make sure we have plenty of time to answer any and all questions. So if we don't get to any questions, or if you think of questions later that you'd like to ask, you can always email me or give me a call, and I'll be happy to discuss it with you if you're interested in getting a quote, even just an estimate to see what it might cost to get certified to ISO 50001. Feel free to give me a call, and we'll sit down and go over the specifics of your scope and your boundaries and what you're looking to get certified, and we'll come up with the best scenario for you. So I'll open up to any questions. If you have questions, feel free to type them into the question box, whether it's about the certification process or requirements of the standard. I'll be happy to address any of those questions. So again, this is just to provide you with a brief overview of what the standard's all about, some of the benefits, and to make as many people aware of the standard as possible. So I don't see any questions yet, so I'll wait a couple more minutes if you have questions. Otherwise, my contact information is here. Please feel free to send me an email. If you want a copy of the presentation, it'll be available on our website following the presentation, or you can email me, and I'll get you the presentation as well. All right. Well, if nobody has any questions, I appreciate everybody taking the time to join us for our webinar today. I know we'll be having some upcoming webinars, especially on ISO 14001 updates to the 2015 revision. That'll be happening in May. So please take a look at our website to see what upcoming webinars we have. We'll have a lot of useful webinars on updates for 14001, as well as R2, your responsible recycling, and other standards. All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for your time, and hope everyone has a great Wednesday, and we look forward to you on future webinars.